आज जो हम आजाद हुए हैं वो आजाद हिंदुस्तान के सुपुत्रों का ही कर्तव्य है कि इसको फिर गुलाम बनने न दे।
The India that we see today is mainly due to the selfless, courageous and determined efforts of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel.
तो हिंदुस्तान आज सदियों के बाद एक हुआ है और एक मौका मिला है, वो घुमाना नहीं चाहिए।
To Sardar Patel, the sovereignty of the nation was of utmost importance to justify the struggles and sacrifices of millions of Indians and realize the dream of India as one nation.
Hi everybody, Sardar Patel was one of the greatest leaders in the history of India. But while most of us have long chapters in our history textbooks about the independence struggle of India, very few of us know what exactly was the contribution of legends like Netaji, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and VP Menon towards building this great nation that we live in. In fact, I bet you that 99% of you have not even heard about a legend named VP Menon. But you know what guys? VP Menon, Nehruji and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel were three of the most important leaders because of whom India today is a single unified country. And funny part is that while our history textbooks told us that Nehruji pinned a rose on his coat and Sardar Patelji is known as the Iron Man of India, they somehow did not bother to throw light on one of the most important chapters of Indian history, which is the reunification of India. Because had this reunification not happened, let alone second fastest growing country, India would have been a very weak country both from the economic and military standpoint. So in this special episode today, let's try to understand what is the story of reunification of India, how did VP Menon, Nehru and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel get hold of important territories of Kashmir and Hyderabad, and most importantly, what are the most authentic study materials to help you understand these important stories of India that our school textbooks never bothered to cover. And if this makes sense to you, please share this video in your social circle to educate our people about the real heroes of India. To understand the value of Sardar Patelji and his team's contribution, let me take you back to 1940s India. This is what India looked like back then, and here's where you will see that the land of India fell into three categories. Number one were the states under British India, number two were the states that were demanded to be a part of Pakistan, and then we had the native Indian states that were ruled by their respective rulers. Now even though these rulers were in charge of their own states, they were operating under the British Raj, so most of them paid taxes to the Brits and abide by their demands. Now other than Pakistan, had these modern day Indian states operated as an individual state, do you realize what would have happened? Each of these states would have been a different country, which means each state would spend on military and place their forces in all their borders. This means instead of pooling our resources into protecting ourselves from giant forces like China, we would have wasted our resources into protecting our state borders. Secondly, all the disputes that are now regarded as interstate disputes would have been international disputes between two different countries. For example, if you look at the Kaveri water dispute, it was a dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu as to who would get more volume of water. Now, in spite of both states being a part of the same country, there were massive protests, violence and lots of chaos. But now, imagine if the same dispute had been between two different countries called Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Do you realize it would have escalated to a catastrophe? And instead of the Supreme Court of India, since it would have been an international matter, the West would have interfered with the UN and US coming into the matter. Thirdly, because we have the center and the state governance, the revenue that the center collects from all across India could be channelized towards the development and support of individual states in our country. For example, if you remember from our Indian states episode, right now, the condition of some Indian states is so bad that Bihar, West Bengal, Jharkhand, MP and UP have 50% of their revenue coming from state in the form of devolution and grants. So you see, without the reinforcement of the states, most of these states would have become like Sri Lanka. And apart from that, there are multiple aspects like trade tariffs, port locations, and then there is the nightmare of partition. So overall, had India not been a single unified country, instead of unity in diversity, it would have been chaos because of diversity. But this is where, ladies and gentlemen, the contribution of the leaders of India comes in, which includes Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, VP Menon and Jawaharlal Nehru. The question is, what is the story of India's reunification and how did Patelji and team unite India? Well, like I said before, in the 1940s, the Indian states were divided into three categories: British India, Pakistan demanded states and native Indian states. So when the Brits were about to leave India, the most challenging part of all was the segregation of these Indian states, appointment of the government, and overall handover of the power from the crown to the local leaders of India. And here's where we saw the rise of the most critical political rivalry in Indian history, which was between the Muslim League and the Indian National Congress. On one side, while there was Jinnah and his followers who wanted Pakistan, on the other side, we had Nehruji and Patelji who were fighting to unite the states under India. And now, the princely states had three options. One was to go with India, or to go with Pakistan, or to remain as an independent state. And if they joined India or Pakistan, they would have to give up their rule in return for a compensation. But while most of them united with India, by 15th of August, some of the major states like Kashmir, Hyderabad and Junagadh were caught in the tussle between India and Pakistan. And this is where the most crucial post-independence struggle of India started. And two of the most iconic stories are the reunification of Kashmir and Hyderabad. Now people, do you realize Kashmir is so important to us that we've been fighting for Kashmir since the past 75 years. We've engaged in 3 major wars with Pakistan and millions of innocent people have suffered both in India and Pakistan due to this conflict of Kashmir. But the question over here is, why is Kashmir so important and why does our army fight so hard and sacrifice so many lives? Well, out of the many reasons, 3 of the most important reasons lie with the geostrategic location of Kashmir. The first reason lies with the glaciers and fresh waters of Kashmir. You see, the glacial waters that flow through Kashmir provide water and electricity to crores of people in India. Here's where we have the 5 main tributaries of Indus River, which are Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Satluj and Beas. And both India and Pakistan heavily rely on these glacial waters flowing from the region to support their agricultural sectors. For India, it is one of the 2 main river systems supporting our agriculture in Punjab, Haryana and Rajasthan. And as far as power is concerned, you will see some of the most important hydro water facilities of India in this region. And had we lost control over this region, we would have been extremely vulnerable to Pakistan damming this entire region, leaving very less water for India. And considering how much we are dependent on agriculture, that would have been disastrous. Secondly, we have the super important Siachen Glacier. For those who don't know, Siachen Glacier is located over here and it demarcates Central Asia from the Indian subcontinent and separates Pakistan from China in this region. The Saltoro region of the Siachen Glacier serves as a divide that prevents direct linking of POK with China and stops them from developing geographical military linkages in this area. Secondly, Siachen also serves as a watchtower for India to keep a deep watch on the Gilgit-Baltistan regions. So even today, if Pakistan gets this location advantage in Siachen, it would become a big threat to India in addition to the Chinese threat from Aksai Chin of the east. On top of that, Siachen also helps India to keep a close watch on China's activities. And lastly, from the trade standpoint, Kashmir had important international boundaries to Tibet in the east, China in the northeast and Afghanistan in the northwest. So giving up Kashmir was not just about the people and culture, but also about an important trade and security matter that would have changed the face of Indian power forever. This is the reason why both India and Pakistan were very keen on getting hold of Kashmir. But back in 1947, the ruler of Kashmir was Raja Hari Singh was reluctant to join either parties and wanted to stay neutral. So on 12th of August 1947, J&K sought a standstill agreement with both India and Pakistan, which basically meant that the Maharaja won't go to either of the parties. But as soon as the Britishers started leaving India, the Maharaja encountered 2 major problems. Number 1, he had lost his security guarantor who were the Brits, and since most of their forces had left, they could not come to his aid in case of a revolt. And number 2, he could not keep an eye on the porous border of Kashmir in case of any external aggression. And on top of all this worry, within just 12 days of signing the standstill agreement, Pakistan wrote a warning letter to the Maharaja saying that if Kashmir fails to join Pakistan, the gravest possible trouble will be inevitable. Then, in June 1947, about 60,000 ex-army men started a no-tax campaign, and this then turned into a secessionist movement with Pakistani flags being hoisted in multiple parts of the country. And on 22nd October 1947, Pakistan mobilized their tribals and launched something called Operation Gulmarg. This is where a group of fully armed men with modern weapons under the direct control of Pakistani army generals entered the land of Kashmir and started causing a havoc. And when this happened, it almost looked like Srinagar would fall. This is when, on 24th of October, the Maharaja appealed to India for military assistance. And here's where Patelji and his team found the perfect opportunity to get Kashmir into India. So immediately, Menonji went to Kashmir, the Maharaja signed the instrument of accession on 26th of October, and the Indian army was airlifted to Srinagar. And finally, the Indian army took control of Jammu and Kashmir, and on 5th of January 1949, a ceasefire was announced. This is how, ladies and gentlemen, the Indian army prevented Kashmir from being taken over by the Pakistanis. And as soon as we took control, Patelji realized that the battle is going to be long and started planning for the same. So within a fortnight, necessary materials were sourced, workers were brought through special trains, and they started working round the clock to complete the road projects. And within just 8 months, a road fully capable of carrying heavy army traffic was constructed between Jammu and Pathankot. And then, to make the state more accessible, Patelji got planes diverted to the Delhi-Srinagar route. Telegraph and even telephone lines were laid between Pathankot, Amritsar and Jammu. This is how the Home Minister of India did everything in his capacity to strengthen the foothold of the Indian army on the land of Jammu and Kashmir. And through the blood and sweat of our soldiers, the paradise of Kashmir was unified and kept unified with India. And even today, our soldiers fight with the god of death to keep our hold over Kashmir. Even today, at extreme temperatures of minus 50 degrees, our Indian army soldiers stand erect so that you and I can sleep peacefully at night. This is the story of Kashmir. And this brings me to the southern part of India, to the story of Hyderabad. Now, geographically, Hyderabad occupies a pivotal position in the heart of our country. The state was surrounded by central provinces in the north, Bombay in the west, and Madras on the east and south. In terms of population and revenue, Hyderabad was a premier state in our country. The population was nearly 16 million and the annual revenue was 26 crore rupees. It had an area of 82,000 square miles, which is almost the same as the size of entire United Kingdom itself. But as it turns out, the Nizam of Hyderabad was said to be more inclined to join Pakistan. Now, if you look at the map, you'll realize if Hyderabad had become a part of Pakistan, first of all, it was a geographically complicated task for Pakistan to govern Hyderabad. And as far as distant ruling is concerned, we all know what happened to the poor Bangladeshis. On top of that, if Hyderabad had become a Pakistani state, considering the history of both our nations, we would have had a border dispute at the center of our country. And like we saw in case of Kashmir, it could have turned bloody as hell, ruining the peace of both India and Pakistan. This is the reason why Patelji and Nehruji wanted to keep control of Hyderabad. So in 1947, Patelji requested the Nizam of Hyderabad to join India, but he refused. Instead, he declared Hyderabad as an independent state on 15th of August. And by October, even he signed the standstill agreement. But as time passed, the local rebel force called the Razakars started to go extremely violent. And again, innocent animals and people were killed, women were horrifically harassed, and they carried out a massacre to suppress the people of Hyderabad. These Razakars were operating directly under a powerful politician named Kazim Rizvi, and he wanted Hyderabad to be a part of Pakistan. And this massacre is what gave Nehruji the pretext to enter Hyderabad. So finally, on the instruction of our Home Minister Sardar Patelji, the Indian Army launched Operation Polo, and within the next 5 days, Indian Army defeated the Razakars, took charge of Hyderabad, and finally, Hyderabad became a part of India. Similarly, Menonji, Patelji and Nehruji worked to unify some of the most important princely states into India. This is where they unified Junagadh, which got us hold over the Arabian Sea, Travancore, which gave us strategically placed points for maritime trade and rich mineral resources, and Jodhpur, which gave us the royal state of Rajasthan. These and many other princely states put together, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, VP Menon and Jawaharlal Nehru unified 565 princely states into forming a single nation called India. This is how India that we know today was formed. And guess what? All this story put together, I have barely covered 0.1% of the story of India's reunification. Which is why this brings me to the most important part of the episode, and that is about the most authentic study materials to help you understand the core history of India that our schools don't teach us. Moving on, the first and perhaps the most important reference I have is this book called The Story of Integration of Indian States, written by the legend VP Menon himself. The second book is this book called The Man Who Saved India on Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. And lastly, just like Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, if you want to know the extraordinary contribution of Netaji, please read this book called An Indian Pilgrim and read about the 1946 Royal Naval Mutiny. That's all from my side for today, guys. If you found this story to be valuable and if you want other Indians to know about this iconic story of India's reunification, please share this video in your social circle with as many people as possible. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button in order to make YouTube Baba happy. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Jai Hind.